Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good day, eh? Gord, you're hurting hippie. Welcome to our talk about Canada. A week ago I asked y'all, ask me questions, ask me about Canada, and I will share. And I've got quite a few answers here, and I think we really should just get on with it. But first, our day. Currently +4. It feels like +4. It's cold outside. I'm not doing this outside, as you can tell. It's going to 22 today. It's going to be a nice day. It's a typical fall day in Calgary. Goes almost to 0 overnight and a beautiful, nice, warm afternoon, and right back down. Oh, excuse me, and that's the coffee. So friends, Canada. What about Canada, eh? Well, first and foremost, from Eddie. Thank you, Eddie. You really contributed a lot on this one. There was only a couple contributors, but I added a bunch of stuff because I know y'all want to learn. First of all, gun control. He asked, what do you guys have? Does it work? Could it work in the U.S.? Those are difficult questions because we have such a different environment from you all. You guys have the Second Amendment. We don't. We don't have something in our Constitution that guarantees us the right to bear arms. So because of that, and because we've never had a constitutional change to give that, we don't have a right. We have a legal allowance for guns. And in Canada, Canadians use guns for a totally different thing. Yes, there are ranges, there is target practice, there is that kind of fun. But to be real honest, I mean, I never even knew there was an issue with guns growing up. My dad always had a couple, and they were always put away, and once in a while taken out for our trips out to the bush to do some grouse hunting, and he sometimes went on a deer hunt. It was about hunting. Guns have never been something that we felt we needed to protect ourselves with. Very few Canadian homes have guns in them for protection. They may have guns in them, but they're put aside. They're there for hunting, they're there for fun, maybe. Our history is so much different. I mean, to be very honest, he asked, is there, would it work in the U.S.? No, it wouldn't work in the U.S. because, you see, we have upwards of 2 weeks waiting for even a handgun. You can't just go in and they quickly put your name in and the background check's done behind the scenes and you get it. And I've seen that in some states, not in all, but anywhere in Canada, you're going to have a fair waiting list, waiting period, until they've done, and their background check is very extensive. Not too often somebody can legally purchase if they are already a criminal or have mental incapacities. Is that a nice way of saying that? I've enjoyed guns when I was growing up. I've never owned one since. I don't think I've shot one since I was 15. And I don't feel like I'm missing anything. I am 100% behind anyone's rights. I understand that, the USA was created from people leaving the king in England to create their own country. They broke away from the king. They broke away from tyranny, from overtaxation, all that, while Canada was still a fledgling little place with Upper Canada and Lower Canada. We were not even a country yet. And we were usually those who had left the United States because of things like Civil War, things like slavery, stuff like that. So we grew from a different pot. And the pot we were in was not so worried about governmental anarchy or anarchy in the streets. We were just concerned that we needed guns to be able to hunt because our food is a little harder to get, maybe. Okay, next. Also from Eddie. So what is the relationship between you guys and the Queen of England? And that's a really good question. A lot of people think we are an independent nation. And yes, in 1982, we finally fully broke and became an independent nation. We are still a member of the Commonwealth, but we are independent. However, we are what is called a constitutional monarchy. It means that the Queen, not England itself, but the Queen herself is also still our Queen. And large changes to our government, such as changes to our Constitution, such as changes to national laws, have to be, we have what's called a representative, the Governor General, who is the Queen's representative. We appoint the Governor General, and he or she reports changes that are happening in Canada to the Queen. The Queen has never come back and said, no, I disagree with that, or exercised any authority, but she does contain some authority over the legislature of our laws. I personally am not into monarchies. It's a personal thing. How come you guys aren't as violent as the US? And that is such a leading question. I'm sorry, but that's a leading question, because for me to answer it, I have to just say, I agree. You guys are more violent than we are. I don't think it's that simple, although it's a good question. We are different. And I did some research, and most of it points to the fact that we were developed as a nation in 1876. By that time, 1867. By that time, the US had already been a nation for over 100 years, and Canada had started growing from those who were escaping or moving away from what they didn't feel was the kind of nation they wanted to be a part of. Canada spent its time trying to make treaties and trying to govern in a very more calm, keep calm, carry on kind of thing. Whereas the US, by the time, I believe by the time we were becoming a full-fledged country under the Queen and had not escaped the King, the US was in civil war. So again, quite a few people coming from the US, escaping what was then a very violent time. That slowly brought us into what we are now as well. We never escaped the King. We, for the most part, Canada was a nation that came from Britain, that posh, polite, careful kind of country. And then we found Aboriginal people that were open to some sort of friendship. It was a different time. Yes, Canada has done its ill will towards the native as well as joined up with them many times. The War of 1812, the only country that ever beat the United States at a war, was my country, and was not even a country at the time yet. But we marched down into into what was the White House then and burned it down and won the War of 1812. One day I'll speak in depth about it. I've studied it. It was intriguing. And we partnered with our natives to win that war. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. Peace. Next. Do you resent being overlooked and having the U.S. get all the attention, or does it work out better? I don't know that Canada's ever overlooked. So again, a leading question that I have to accept the premise that we're overlooked for me to answer it. And I think I choose instead to say we're not overlooked. We just have different desires internationally. When I grew up anyway, and it's a little different now, but not much, I was always taught the U.S. was a melting pot, Canada was a mosaic. The U.S., bring you're tired, you're weak, you're hungry, and then conform to our ways, become an American. Where in Canada we have basically said, bring whatever you want and live however you want. Just do it as a Canadian and be strong and powerful in what you do. There's a sense of pride in our ancestryhood, rather than just saying we're now Canadian and we divulge ourselves of all previous history. No, we respect it, we support it. We have towns in Alberta that you can't speak English in. They're Ukrainian or Russian. It's a different atmosphere. It's a different world. So, do we resent being overlooked? Actually, it kind of works out. That's a good answer. And where do you think the polite Canadian stereotype comes from? Again, I say because of our separation from the U.S. For years and years and years, the U.S. has been this boisterous neighbor, this loud neighbor. And so we decided en masse to just say, let the baby have their cookie, let them do the fighting for the world. We'll sit back and just enjoy this wonderful, huge country that we have. Charles George says, I'm really into different kinds of wildlife. I know Canadian geese and that's about it. Well, there's the Canadian moose, and I know you have the same moose down there, but you have much fewer of them. We have a lot of moose, and they are big and can be very dangerous. I have a picture of a moose right here that I took. I was standing only 8 feet from her. Absolutely beautiful moose, and I talked to her. And for the longest time, she'd look at me and then eat some leaves. Look at me, eat some leaves while I'm talking to her. And then she started to move her foot. And I looked at her and I says, are you getting bothered? You maybe want me to leave you alone? She moved her foot a couple more times and I realized, and I hopped in my car and I drove away and let her be. We also have the beaver. Beaver is a huge animal and a dangerous animal. You ever see one, walk away, because they tend to go straight for your leg and they can bite a hole right through it. They can be very violent animals, but they are beautiful and they're on our coinage, on our nickel. So, I don't know, the Canadian goose, they get a bad rap. I went down, I lived in Fort Wayne, Indiana for year and a half, kind of off and on, working down there, and they had a lot of Canadian geese there and nobody liked them. They just poop and make noise. Here, they're just a part of the scenery, you know? And from Sikhs, I wanted to bring this one up because I thought it was a really good one. Just recently, our Prime Minister has called the Aboriginal people a nation unto itself living here in Canada. First of all, that's kind of pandering. That's our Prime Minister. That's our Prime Minister. He's a panderer. He's a social justice warrior. He's a white prince. He is a feminist. He is anything he needs to be to get reelected. And this is not supposed to be a complaint about our prime minister, but it's a chance for me to say so. But he asked, does this erode our own nationhood by saying this? And the story goes on to claim, if you're going to give the Aboriginal people, just a minute. I have to. If you're going to give the Aboriginal people their own nationhood, to tell them that they are a nation within our nation, that they can manage themselves separately, that's a dangerous kind of precedence. Does it start the slippery slope of other people, such as our French, and heck, any others? We've had Muslim Canadians since the early 1800s, so can't they also claim said nationhood? I would have to say it's a good argument, but it falls apart because the only peoples that can claim first ownership of the land are the Aboriginal people. And therein lays the rub, because their own way of dealing with nature and Mother Earth is that nobody owns it. So I find this a really difficult argument. No, nationhood is not going to be espoused to our French, to our Muslim brothers, to our black people. It isn't. This is just a indication of today's cultural world, where we have to socially signal our own ability to be above and beyond the racism and the horrible meanness that's everywhere. And it's not. And so we wrap up the Ask Me About Canada. You can still ask more below. If you had a question, ask it below. I'll answer it below. Unless 100 more questions come forward, then I'll do it. So now, you know what we have? A little known facts. All about Canada, eh? Hey y'all. Little known facts. Hey y'all. Little known facts. One of my favorite parts of my daily show, and today it's all about Canada. You've seen this flag over and over again. Well, everyone's familiar with our red and white maple leaf, but Canada was 100 years old before we got the flag. Most don't know that. National flag of Canada was proclaimed by Queen Elizabeth on January 28, 1965. It was raised on Parliament Hill in Ottawa for the first time a couple of weeks later, February 15th. 1965. This was one of our flags before then. We went through a few, most of them showing our tie to the Commonwealth. And what about A? A? Yes, in Canada it's often used as a way to pick on us, as a way to tease us, because we say A all the time, but A is a word in Canada, and it means, you know, eh? That was a simple one. And the loonie, the Canadian dollar, named after the bird that was on the other side of the coin, on the opposite of the Queen's head. The loonie is our Canadian dollar bill. I know people make fun of it, the loonie, the crazy thing, but it's the loon, the bird. What people don't know is, as a promotional piece, the Canadian Royal Mint made, look at that, a gigantic loonie made of 99.9% gold. It was worth $1 million. $1 million. Wow. So friends, that's your Canadian education for today. Stick around because sometime today or tomorrow will be my secondary review of Huckleberry CBD. So stay tuned, friends, and thanks for your contributions that made this video possible. Peace and cheers, love and harmony. Catch you on the other side. Peace.